Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's March Biketivist Forum, where we're going to navigate into our city's bike plans and also just get an overall understanding of what exactly are those 100 plans out there. And we have two wonderful speakers whom I'll get to shortly. Before that, let's go over just some quick meeting guidelines. In this entire forum and also for the next part, which is your local team meetings, make sure that you make space and take space. So just be aware of how much time you're talking versus listening, and make sure everyone else also gets a chance to speak. Be respectful of one another and our differences. Do not interrupt when somebody else is speaking. Oops. Try to stay on topic as much as possible and focus on the topics relevant to people present. Take other conversations offline. Always assume good intent. And quick online meeting basics, please rename yourself to include your city and pronouns. Ask questions via the chat. You can ask questions even when the speaker presentations are going on, but ask them via chat. And please stay muted until the breakout sessions. Running over quickly for today's agenda. We're in the first part where we're doing quick welcome and introduction to the topic. Then we're going to begin speaker presentations, which will go on for about 20 minutes. Then we'll have another 20-25 minutes for Q&A. Then we'll just have some closing remarks, wrap up today's topic, and share some Bike to Wherever Day announcements and what's going to happen in Bike Month. And finally, in the next hour, we'll break out into groups by city. So here we are with today's two amazing speakers. So we have Ramses Madau from San Jose Department of Transportation. I hope, Ramses, I said your name right.
Ramses Madau, but
Madau, sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. He's been with the city for 6 years, and before that he was with Stanford for about 10 years. So lots and lots of experience in planning and transportation. And on the other side, we have Patrick Gilster, who is with San Mateo County Transportation Authority, and he's been with the county for a couple years, before which he was with Tool Design. So he also comes with a lot of expertise in planning and design. So we're going to kickstart with Patrick, who will give us an overall picture of what exactly are the different plans out there, and he'll start with the macro scale of talking right from the state and go down to local level plans, and then we'll shift to Ramses, who will dive us deep into a particular bike ped plan with the example of the city of San Jose. So off to you, Patrick.
Great, thanks, Andy. Let me share my screen really quick. Make sure we have the right one up. All right. So I'll be talking about the types of plans that are out there, starting all the way, as I mentioned, from kind of big picture federal government, how it trickles down all the way to what we see at the local level and how that interacts with planning and funding. As Andy mentioned, I'm the Director of Planning and Fund Management at the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, also known as the TA for folks in San Mateo County. My first kind of 10 years of my career was spent on the consulting side, kind of started on the land use planning and economic side with Diesel Weiss Consulting, and then switched to the transportation focused side with Fair and Peers and Tool Design Group after that. In total, I've led and developed over at least 20 active transportation plans. Some kind of the bigger highlights include leading the City County Association of Governments of San Mateo County's comprehensive bicycle pedestrian plan, and then the deputy project manager for the Caltrans district level active transportation plans. So I work for SMCTA. We manage the voter approved Measure A and Measure W sales taxes in San Mateo County. We have a whole host of different programs that we manage, from highways, local streets and roads, grade separations for the railroad, transit funding, the one we're mostly here to talk about today, ped and bike, and the thing I care about most, and then our TDM program as well. The TA with Measure A, Measure W, a lot of folks think of us as highway folks, but if you look at the actual amount of funding we have and what it goes to, only about 25% of our funding goes towards highways. And we've worked with Measure W to have the highway program actually be able to fund bike and ped projects on the state highway system in collaboration with Caltrans. So don't expect everyone to fully grasp all of this, but just kind of wanted to show how much we're investing, especially in transit and access for people walking and biking. So who are all the players when it comes to planning and funding? To me, they kind of go hand in hand when you get above the local level in the cities. So on the federal scale, we start with the US Department of Transportation, which includes the Federal Highway Administration, FHWA, Federal Transit Administration, FTA, and Federal Rail Administration. There's a whole host of other agencies under US DOT, but those are really the main ones that interact with most of the transportation things we deal with here at the local level. Kind of coming down a level from that, at the state level, we have the California State Transportation Agency, known as CASTA. And this includes the California Transportation Commission, CTC, which handles a lot of the funding. The one most people know of, Caltrans, the State Department of Transportation, CHP, DMV, high-speed rail, and the Office of Traffic Safety, which provides a lot of funding for really cool safety projects and programs. Taking a look down from that at the regional level for the 9 Bay Area counties, we have the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Caltrans District 4. So each of the 12 districts across the state manage one of the kind of MPOs, the Metropolitan Planning Agencies. Coming down a little bit from there to or a little bit more tangible at the county-wide scale, we have the City County Association of Governments of San Mateo County, CCAG, which is one of our big partner agencies for those involved in San Mateo County. My agency, SMCTA, the County of San Mateo itself. On the Santa Clara side, we have Santa Clara County for the county and unincorporated areas, and then the Valley Transportation Authority, VTA. A little bit different than in San Mateo County. VTA is both the congestion management agency like CCAG and also the funding agency for their sales tax measures like we are. So all kind of housed under one umbrella. And then the most kind of where the pedal hits the road is the local cities. So in this presentation, I'll kind of walk through kind of some of the plans of what they do at each of these levels. So the federal side, US DOT is primarily a funding agency in relation to active transportation. Really their main focus for planning is really on the national highway system and on freight, things that cross those state boundaries. In California, Caltrans actually has delegated authority for a lot of the statewide environmental planning and review processes. That helps kind of take things off the Federal Highway Administration and let them do things that apply to California. And then also the federal government gives money to metropolitan planning agencies like MTC, and they have formula funds that they do the congestion management, air quality funds, and the state transportation block grants as well. So that's kind of all trickles down to what we see for like the 1 Bay Area grants, when those are the competitive programs and things like that. So, and then what people are probably most familiar with recently is hearing a lot about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA. Sorry, my husband is walking through. He gets bored when I talk about anything planning related. So he'll fall asleep if he listens to me. But so the IIJA is also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and that created a lot of the new funding programs that we're dealing with today. The RAVE program, Safe Streets for All, and a lot of there's a whole host of them. Can't keep them. In this presentation, I have a lot of links. So for those that are interested, Sonia can help maybe send that out to participants later, and you can peruse at your own time too. And then when we take a look at the state, in terms of active transportation, what really guides us is the Toward an Active California document. This is really a policy and planning framework that Caltrans put together that tiers off the California Transportation Plan 2040. It's since been updated to now we have the CTP 2050. But really this established for active transportation new goals related to safety, mobility, preservation, and social equity. And that's been driving a lot of what Caltrans has been doing. They are a massive agency. They are slow to change, but we're hopeful and they're doing better as time goes by, as we keep pushing them to progress. And this plan also set up different measures of success for how that would be implemented. At the statewide level as well for CalSTA, in terms of kind of how everything trickles down, a really important document that's recently adopted in June 2021 is the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure. And it's really established new climate equity framework that really figures out how we're going to invest our funding. So it trickles down to all of those funding programs, including the Active Transportation Program, Solutions for Congested Corridors, and local partnership programs. Anything kind of set up by the Senate Bill 1, those competitive programs. So it creates new evaluation criteria based on the priorities from this plan. And that's how things are getting funded from our local plans. At the regional scale, Caltrans District 4 also has both a bike plan and a pedestrian plan. Across the state, these are known as the Caltrans Active Transportation Plans, or the CAT plans. So as I mentioned in the beginning, this is what I led when I was at Tool Design Group. And really, this was establishing what Caltrans refers to as location-based needs, or LBNs. As you can kind of see on the left, there's points and lines. So these are the corridors and crossing locations along the state highway system where investments are most needed. So one of the things to know about the Caltrans process is these are not projects in and of themselves, but these are, when developing projects, where should there be things incorporated or identified needs on the highway system that will eventually become projects in the next phase of Caltrans work. But very good backup as you look at other things or incorporating things at the local level and encouraging Caltrans to incorporate more bike and ped improvements. A few other things that Caltrans District 4 has been leading, just to be aware of, other major planning studies, includes the recent bike highway study. So it identified locations for low stress, high quality, continuous bike corridors across all of the 9 Bay Area counties. It has some cool concepts in there that you can see in the appendix and identifies possible pilot locations as well. I know Santa Clara County, I think, has a few more than San Mateo County, but they're for San Mateo County, they did identify what could be on El Camino Real as well. Another long-range multimodal planning document is the US 101 South Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, or CMCP. And this is really a long-range corridor planning document of all the different types of projects that could be eligible for the Solutions for Congested Corridors plan, so or program funding. So a project has to be in that document in order to be eligible to even be put forth in that with other projects. Then at the regional level with MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, the MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Agency for the 9 Bay Area counties. The biggest document they create is Plan Bay Area 2050. It's our regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy. These are required elements from the federal and state governments to have for each region. And this identifies major projects that could be implemented or funded across all different modes of transportation. So Plan Bay Area goes beyond just transportation, but there's a whole chapter dedicated to it. And it's what helps us get projects in the Regional Transportation Improvement Program and the State Transportation Program, RTIP and STIP. MTC is also in the process of finalizing the Regional Active Transportation Plan. A lot of great work they've done so far in it is updating the Complete Streets policy and checklist. For those involved in the 1 Bay Area grants, recently we had to do a whole checklist with the new format for that. It also established a regional bike network, or RBN as they call it, which defines major backbone corridors for priority investments. So that's what you can see on the right. They're not necessarily prescriptive of what project, but they are here is where the investments across their 9 Bay Area counties should be targeted. On the pedestrian side, for those interested, the improvements targeted for pedestrians are located in the priority development areas, which are kind of our key areas for growth in each part of the counties. And this really helps us prioritize projects in regional and competitive funding programs like 1 Bay Area Grant or MTC's regional ATP allocations as well. Taking a look at the countywide scale, in San Mateo County, CCAG has the Comprehensive Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. CCAG is the Congestion Management Agency and the County Transportation Agency for San Mateo. And in that plan, a few key things to highlight that you can see on the right are they have both the complete bikeway network, which takes all the local plans, puts them into a web map, so you can see them, but also then developed the priority backbone bikeway network. This is actually what was taken then by MTC to include in the regional bike network. And then in the blue areas, you can see the pedestrian focus areas that were developed as part of that plan, which overlap a lot with the MTC priority development areas. Another thing unique to that plan is it created equity focus areas that also complement that as well. So while the state and MTC also have their definition of equity, San Mateo County took it a step further and looked at where else above and beyond that should we be investing funds, knowing that how expensive it is to live and travel in San Mateo County. We wanted to identify more areas where there's more need for folks. And then my agency, we have the Strategic Plan 2020-24. Since we manage the sales taxes, we give out lots of funding, and this creates our policy and prioritization for how we then rank and give out the funding for projects. In Santa Clara County, VTA is similar to the Congestion Management Agency, and as mentioned at the beginning, they also manage the Measure B sales tax. Similarly, they have the VTA Countywide Bike Plan, the Bicycle Superhighway Implementation Plan, which is a really interesting document to read through. And they have also done a lot of major complete street studies as well. So on Story Keys and Tasman and Bascom. So on the local level, I'm not going to dive too far into a bike plan itself, but I'll just give an example. Each city has these similar types of plans. You'll have to go to your city's individual website to find all of these. But I'm just using an example for the city of San Mateo. So every city is required by the state to have a general plan. This establishes the citywide vision and goals, which influence all city departments and future growth within a city. The general chapters that are required, the Office of Planning and Research from the state has all the guidance of how you have to develop these chapters and what's required. But it generally includes a land use chapter, circulation, housing, conservation, safety, noise, public services, and some cities even go above and beyond that and add more to that. As you can see on the right, they are historically traffic focused, but updates are doing a lot better at including all modes. And then this is where a lot of our level of service vehicle standards come from. So that's a great way that we're moving away from that to vehicle miles traveled. So tiering off of many general plans, cities often then have either an active transportation plan, a pedestrian plan, or a bike plan and or a bike plan. So this is really a citywide bike plan that San Mateo adopted in 2020. Includes things like a community engagement process, prioritization of their projects, the existing and proposed networks, and implementation strategies in future studies. And Ramsey will talk a lot more about those, so I won't go into a lot of detail. And then last but not least, just other types of local planning efforts that many cities do. Similarly, tiering off of general plans are specific plans. These are focused area plans that look at certain areas for all types of characteristics, including housing, land use, multimodal transportation, urban design, and much more. San Mateo's also done things like develop a transit-oriented development pedestrian access plan, and then a sustainable streets plan, and even different corridor studies, like one we're kicking off in collaboration with them for Mobility Hub and Fashion Island Boulevard Class 4 separated bikeway project, complete street project. And with that, I'll hand it back to Sonia, who can.
Thank you, Patrick. This was super helpful. And with that, I think it's a good segue for Ramses to kickstart. Off to you, Ramses.
All right, let me share my screen here. All right, so I'm going to go in a little more in depth, right, and talk a little bit about what Patrick just said. Are we going? There we go. Are you guys seeing the correct screen, or are you seeing the presenter view?
We're not seeing the presenter view, but we can see your navigation on the left. And the slide is also very small.
Okay, hold on. Sorry, hold on. My Zoom crashed.
Yeah, my Zoom just crashed too, but it let me right back in.
Oh, okay.
All right, I'm back. Let's see if that works. My Zoom crashed all the way when I tried to do that. So let's see here. Open this up, just close some other windows, make sure that's not what's going on there. Okay, do this first. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about what's going on in San Jose and relate it a bit back to what Patrick was talking about. because, okay, where's my share screen? There it is. Yep. And there we go. All right. Hopefully it don't crash again. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the plans we have in San Jose, and really I want to gear this towards giving y'all the tools to come and talk to electeds or talk to us and city government about, hey, why haven't you gotten this done yet? Right. I mean, I feel like that's kind of the role of activists out there, right? As we plan, well, the role of activists is to help us plan correctly and then to help us keep on the plans as priorities start mounting, right? And so I want to make sure that you guys have a way to kind of keep us, keep our feet to the fire. So let's see if I can actually get this to work. There we go. Okay, I'm Ramses Madhu, the Division Manager of Planning, Policy, and Sustainability for the City of San Jose. I oversee long-range transportation planning, area transportation planning, corridor transportation planning, bicycle and emerging mobility, as well as kind of our sustainability efforts and all of that. I feel incredibly lucky to have the job I have. All right. I do see John Brazil is in the audience here, so I feel a little bit like I'm taking his thunder here. John Brazil actually was the master of creating our current bike plan in the city of San Jose. And in its development, we're quite proud of it. It's one of the most equitably focused development processes for a bike plan, and its outcome, what is actually planned through it is pretty progressive. We got lots of kudos even from New York City saying, wow, you guys have a larger protected bikeway system planned in San Jose than we have in New York City. So it's a pretty incredible plan, right? And the vision for this really is all ages and abilities, that 8 to 80 demographic that we want to have feel comfortable on the streets in San Jose on bikes. Currently, we don't have that, and we have a lot of work to do to get there. And this plan is really the big kind of stake in the ground to get there, right? And so overall, our goals, of course, are safety, equity, and mode shift. San Jose has very aggressive mode shift goals, trying to reduce automobile use to about 50% of trips over the next 20 years. And ultimately, we ended up with a 550-mile bikeway network, and I'll show you maps of that in a second. I'm not going to go into a lot about the bike plan development, just a little bit, because I think what matters most is kind of what's the outcome of the plan, giving you some tools on how to do it. But to give you a little bit about it, right? The way that we develop a plan like this is one, we look at related plans, right? And so we look at a lot of those plans that Patrick was just talking about, right? I saw in the chat, you know, how are these related? Well, we look at the plans that are out there, the county-wide plan of Caltrans has a plan, whatever it is, and we use those as linchpins, and whatever information is out there from those plans, we kind of assume those, or we comment on those, we potentially progress what's planned in there. But usually higher level plans either have certain jurisdictional boundaries, meaning the county tends to focus on either really big things that cover multiple jurisdictions, or they cover linkages between smaller systems, right? So to try to cover those areas where cities might not be thinking, because it's kind of on their edge. So I'll say we think a lot about our edges, but they cover those kinds of things, right? And so each layer of plan kind of covers different things. And once you get higher than the county, you're usually talking about funding mechanisms, right? Like Patrick was just talking about, right? You'll get some actual area planning now, especially out of Caltrans, which is doing their corridor planning, which is actually new and impressive, and we're pretty happy to see that. But anyways, so related plans. We then do our network analysis, really looking at safety information, how stressful it is to bike around the city, things like that, connectivity, and trip potential, right? How much demand is there? Where do we think there's latent demand in the system that we could hopefully capture and bring more people out onto their bikes? And then, of course, community input. And in this plan in particular, we did an immense amount of community input, reaching out in multiple languages and really getting out there. So just giving you a sense of this, right? So, you know, San Jose is 180 square miles. It has 2,600 miles of roadway. So we have a lot to do. And so we have to do the citywide bike plan is kind of a gargantuan effort when you really look at it. And so these are two of the ways that we look at it when we're looking at it across the city. Sorry, get something on my way here. There we go. And you can see here left this very important measurement, right, of how stressful is it to move around by bike, right? It measures things like amount of traffic, speed of traffic, and other things that that generally give a sense of where biking feels comfortable. And this helps us kind of understand where we need to invest and what kinds of facilities we need to build, right? So is a stripe on the side of the road? Okay, well, generally almost never, but we're really trying to move away from that. Protected bikeway, is that needed, or a buffer, things like that, right? And occasionally bike boulevards as well. You can see here on the right side, the high injury intersections and where they are, right? And this tracks with our Vision Zero program. We work the bike program and the Vision Zero program are constantly working together to kind of bring projects about that help, kind of help meet all the goals of those programs. Then connectivity and demand, right? Blue areas on the left map show areas where biking is generally accessible, meaning you can get to a lot of places and you can get around to various places. And red is where things are, pretty much, it's very hard to get around by bike to many places. And you can see we have these kind of locked off pockets around the city that really hurt us as an overall system. And then you map that over on the right side to where we think there's potential demand. And to potential demand is looked at through things like short trips, right? Trips under 3 miles that are easily done by bikes, and lots of other factors that tell us where we think folks might actually want to bike, right? And so you can kind of see, all right, well, there's a lot of demand here or there, and the connectivity is really bad, and that level of stress is high. Oh man, well, we might really be able to do something there, right? So with all that, we ended up with this multicolored spaghetti bowl of recommendations, right? So this is the bike plan in all its glory in the most simple format. This is the map that shows where we want to see bike lanes and the different types. Now, you'll get this presentation afterwards, I believe, and I've put links in here at the top there to go directly to this map. It's an interactive map, and you can really go in and toggle, all right, I want to see where all the protected bike lanes are planned and where they are, those kinds of things. And that's one of those tools, right? Coming to us in the city as staff or as going to electeds and saying, hey, you guys have this plan. Why aren't you focusing on this? Is already a pretty good tool. So where are we today? That's the plan network, walking through kind of what this plan does, where we're going. All right, well, right now, as of very recently, we just updated, we do an annual report to our Transportation and Environment Committee. And we're just, Ryan Smith, our bike program manager. I don't know if you're here, Ryan. I can't look at the participants right now, but Ryan's done this work to update all that. You can see we've got a pretty robust network right now. We've already got 523 miles, and that does include the 63 miles of our trails. But you can see a lot of it is sharrows and general bike lanes. And we're very proud of the high number. We know that those general bike lanes, that means a stripe on the side of the road, really need to be upgraded, right? So where are we going and what have we accomplished recently? Giving you some easy numbers, the spaghetti bowl map is kind of hard to read. Our planned network is 350 miles of protected bikeway, 100 miles of bike boulevards, and the like. And you can see we're making good progress. Last year, we added 33 miles to the network overall, and we've enhanced 18 miles, meaning we've either added buffers or some kind of protection to those lanes. And you can see here how those are spread across the city. All right, so that's kind of where we're going, and a little picture of what we've done recently. Now, what's really important with plans, and for folks like you to kind of come to us and say, hey, what's going on, is to look at the end of most plans, at least all of our plans in San Jose that we've done in the last few years, we add implementation steps and we add prioritization. And these are, particularly the prioritization is something we work out with the community and the folks who are engaged in developing the plan to really understand where we should focusing our efforts. 2,600 miles of roadway is a lot, and 550 miles of bikeway is also a lot, and we can't do it all at once. And so how do we prioritize? So what we did do was prioritize in these areas. You can see here in these blobs, North San Jose, East San Jose, and the like, based on those demand maps, those stress maps, as well as public input and council input to kind of say, all right, where should we be putting our first big tranche of effort? You can see there the numbers of how much it costs to do this, and these numbers are, not inflation adjusted yet, so they're probably already quite a bit bigger. And there on the right side, you can see the map that shows what that priority network actually is on the roadway. All right, so how are we doing in terms of getting this done? We're actually doing pretty well. Could always be doing better and all that, but we feel pretty good about how quickly we're going. You can see here the blue solid lines are what's already been built. The blue dotted lines are what's funded, and then unfunded is the orange. Our biggest, most exciting announcement as of very recently is we got $40 million to redo a huge portion of Story Keys, which is a very important east-west corridor for a lot of our equity priority communities in the city. And it is a pretty unsafe and scary place to bike. And we'll be building out. We already have plans and everything to build out protected bikeways there. So we're pretty excited about that. You can see this is moving along, but a great place to focus when you're looking at the plans and all that. I am going to throw in, let's see, how much more time do I have? Not very much, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So instead of, there we go. Okay. And so instead of showing you a different plan, what I want to do is just jump in to, where is it here? There we go. The website. Now, most plans in most cities have websites that kind of are the memorialization and a way to track the plans after they're put out, right? This is the bike plan website. The whole bike plan is here. The map is here. This is really important to kind of tracking what's going on. But what I want to bring up here is ways that we can report on an update. So here at the bottom, we have the memos that go to our transportation.
Oh no, we lost Ramses.
Okay, sorry, I will not share my screen again that way because
You're still here.
So yeah, on that website, you can see links to our annual reports for what's going on with the plan. And it's a great thing to track because that's where we're giving our update. It's the place where our Transportation and Environment Committee is listening in. Hey, who cares about this? What is the community thinking about this? Is a really good time to step in and say, hey, we as the bike community really wish DOT was doing this or the city was prioritizing that, that kind of thing, right? And actually the next one is coming up very soon. We'll send you the date after this. It's not at the tip of my tongue. But there's also another meeting I wanted to share with you guys, which is the Movimento, which is a area plan we have in San Jose. And there's a bunch of quick strike bike projects that are being presented to the public on March 22nd. And we'll make sure that Sandhya can send out that information to y'all so you guys can show up if you feel like that's what you want to do. But I know I'm basically out of time, so I'll stop there. There's so much more to be said, but yeah, hope this is the start of the conversation.
Yes, thank you so much. I know, and I think even if we take the entire hour to talk about bike plans, that itself would be less. But we have to stop so we can make this. We can take questions from the audience, and there are already a ton of questions in the chat. So I'm going to shoot right in. The very first question is about like it seems like every other month there's a new survey. There are different opportunities to provide feedback. Somebody's asking you to put a pin on a map to highlight traffic safety issues in the community, and every entity comes out with different goals. And obviously, these are coming from different agencies. So is there any effort or potential to collect and consolidate all these efforts so it doesn't have to start from nothing every time? And on similar lines, are there any agencies or private companies that stitch the plans together or overlay them so you can see all the different plans from different agencies in a specific city together?
I'll take a small portion of that and then Patrick can probably answer the rest of it better. You know, when we develop a plan in the city of San Jose, we, like I was saying, we reference those other plans, right? And if there's things that are already planned in those plans, meaning a particular route or a particular facility, we'll either assume that in our plan and the input that came from it, or sometimes we'll question it if there's good reason. Hey, we don't think that's a good idea, or hey, we want to progress that a little further. So in a certain way, you know, good planning always builds on the planning that happened before it. It's another kind of bite at the apple every time you're planning. But I'll also say a lot of times different plans are coming from different levels, right? And so that's that other part. But I think Patrick can probably give more input on the further part of that.
Yeah, I would say it generally depends. In terms of public engagement and dropping the pins on a map, you would say it tends to start over a lot depending on what agency you're working with. I know there are ways in which I think, I don't know if Teresa's still on, Teresa Baez-Kelly from San Mateo County Office of Education shared with me that Stanford has a new portal through their health department or their health studies that is actually kind of a singular platform where other agencies can use to drop pins and things like that and have a consolidated space. So that's kind of one area to consolidate data. But I think UC Berkeley Safe Trek also has a similar platform. And so there's ways in which, as your cities are developing, you could encourage them to use those for everything, as opposed to kind of each consultant has their own platform, or they hire a community engagement consultant that uses a certain platform, and it all gets scoped differently depending on the plan. So if maybe potentially encouraging your cities or your agencies to think about using one of those instead of starting from scratch every time, that might be a good way to address kind of the engagement fatigue on there too, or maybe that's something SBDC could help provide guidance to the cities or something about what they think we should be using for these types of projects as it relates to transportation. In terms of stitching all the plans together, I did see it kind of in the chat and kind of goes with that too, about kind of plans kind of start at the local citywide level and then they all get aggregated to the countywide level. So when CCAG did their comprehensive bike and ped plan, and when I led that, we took every single city's GIS kind of map, so the digital map version, and stitched them all together and created kind of one unique map. And so that's kind of across all the cities, and then MTC also did that at the regional level. So they do get incorporated up as you go. So that's kind of there, but there's no way to like layer them necessarily or click through how they all overlap or something like that, that I know of at least.
Since we are talking about regional plans, I have another follow-up question. If I understand correctly, how regional plans work is basically they just compile all the local plans together. But then what role do these regional entities play when it comes to regional routes? And we have a popular problem with El Camino Real, for example. Every city has different proposals for their ECR stretch. So what happens in that case? Do regional authorities go out of their way to make sure that there is consistent treatment along the entire corridor and that it aligns with their complete streets goals?
So we'll say in San Mateo County, it doesn't happen as much yet. It is something that SamTrans, the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, and CCAG are trying to actually create kind of a program manager for El Camino Real, kind of on our end, that can work with all the cities to make sure we have consistent plans, and that the Transportation Authority, we can help guide that through the Caltrans process for each city. So I know we're helping the town of Colma get through their effort right now. So a lot of the hurdle is really getting, not just coming up with the vision and doing the planning effort, that really should happen at the city level. kind of at your locality to say, what does your city want to see with your version or your segment of El Camino Real? But then it's really getting through the Caltrans process, which is the really difficult thing. So kind of the next step of that is kind of the Caltrans project initiation document phase. And that's often $1 million to $1.2 million effort in and of itself before you even getting into designing a facility. So kind of getting Caltrans clearance and then environmental clearance helps have the vision, but some of the larger, at least for San Mateo County, some of the larger agencies are trying to help take a more active role in that. So I think we're helping South San Francisco, Colma, Atherton, we've been working with Redwood City with their state highway operations and performance. But I don't remember exactly what the SHOP acronym was off the top of my head, but Caltrans funding project. So there's a lot happening on El Camino Real in San Mateo County, and there's a lot that SamTrans is interested in. They just did an El Camino Real speed and reliability study for their buses. Now they also want to make sure cities are incorporated the transit benefits for people walking, biking, accessing transit as well.
And since
just
we're
add-
talking,
I'll add
Yeah.
just a slight complication to this, which I think is really important for folks to realize, is that regional agencies don't actually have very much power over what the roadways actually are. What they have is the power of the purse, right? So this, a city can say what happens in its roads within the legal bounds of what's allowed in the roadway. And the way that the regional agencies generally drive things is through the regional plans, and the regional plans are mostly funding plans, right? They want certain kinds of treatments, right? And so for cities to kind of go the regional way, the region can try and plan things, and sometimes that works. The VTA did these really great complete street studies with us in our neighboring jurisdictions, so sometimes they do that. But that takes a lot of trust and a lot of kind of deep work to get there. But a lot of times you're really dealing with a jurisdictional layering issue that can be quite difficult to navigate.
thank you. The next question is, and maybe Ramses, you can throw some more light on this. Plans are often ambitious. I think you already mentioned the San Jose bike plan says they want to have complete streets treatments for 523 miles of roads. So they are ambitious. There are hundreds of projects. And so what does it really mean to have a plan fully implemented? And what is the timeline of implementation of any plan?
Yeah, great. Those are really, really important questions. So one, in San Jose, we used to have a lot more, I would say, over the top ambitious plans. That kind of just put ideas on the table versus kind of projects. And I think we've moved more towards trying to push ambitious but more realistic plans out there. So our bike plan is very ambitious, but we are carrying it through. And I'll say our last bike plan, the reason we had to do a new bike plan actually is because our last bike plan was substantially complete. So what does it mean for a bike plan to be complete? It means that most, and in very rare cases, everything in the bike plan was actually built, or decisions, mostly engineering decisions, have made it so that we couldn't do certain things, right? Because plans are kind of a higher level, and once you get to those engineering decisions, you can't do everything. So that's one thing. Then timelines, right? And so I was mentioning these implementation chapters that we're putting at the end of most plans. That's where the timelines are laid out. We want to do X, Y, and Z by so much time, or this plan is supposed to extend to a certain period. And so in our bike plan, for example, there's a 5-year window, and then there's the general plan window, which is until 2040. And so the current scope really is all the way out there. But what we're focused on is that 5-year kind of initial window. Now, is it going to be 5 years? Is it going to be 7 years? Is it going to be set that within 5 years we got most of the priority network plus some other things that happened? We do a lot of kind of piggybacking on other projects to get things done, which ends up being good, but doesn't always mean that we're doing exactly the prioritization set that we want, because we don't have control over other project characteristics or project timelines. But yeah.
The only thing I'll add to that is really, when I used to lead a lot of these, many jurisdictions didn't want to do a funding constrained implementation network. So what I encourage a lot of cities to do now, kind of sitting on the funding side now, is really take a really good look at how much money are you getting from either your sales tax measures, how much money do you think you can get from grant programs, and come up with a dollar value to help ballpark in that range. What amount of projects do you think you could realistically do? And then you can create a network around that, kind of saying, realistically, how can we create a connected network now, knowing we have $20 million over 5 years, potentially. Sometimes the order of magnitude is, you can see it's on a Ramsey, but it's huge for some of the bike networks. The CCAG plan, I think, said we had over $400 million worth of projects that didn't have funding identified for them. So it's a massive opportunity out there. So.
Patrick, I had a question from your presentation. So you gave the city of San Mateo example of the various local area plans. So the city of San Mateo has a sustainable streets master plan. They have a bicycle pedestrian master plan and a couple more. And now they're creating a plan to combine all of these plans together. So what are your thoughts on that? Wouldn't it be better that if the city actually spent money to implement what is there in the plan versus like spending money to create another plan?
I will say not all plans are created equal. So a lot of it is that they don't always get reconciled with other citywide efforts at the same time. So I would say a lot of bike plans are very ambitious and will put a lot of projects out there, but then there are also going to be other competing efforts from the city, such as urban stormwater infrastructure, things like that need to occur, and where things like bulb outs will occur, which will impede your ability to do certain bike facilities or something like that. So I think part of it is also reconciling. I actually love when folks do complete streets networks and really think of everything kind of on top of each other and not just the bike network by itself. And it really shows, okay, here we're prioritizing routes for bikes. Therefore, we need to make these certain trade-offs, such as parking removal or things like that, that often stop projects for those corridors. So that kind of more elected level people know that these are the priorities on that corridor in that area, and that the vehicle network or something like that is happening one block over or something like that. And so that you're making those trade-off decisions kind of at a bigger scale and not just on a kind of one plan scale. And ideally, you would do that as you're developing a bike plan, but not every plan gets into how the cross section of the street will look like and how you can deal with it at every intersection and things like that. You can't get into that level of detail with each individual plan. So sometimes those plans build on each other to come up with more complete concepts or something like
that. Okay, one more question for you guys. So does San Jose, let's start with Ramses. Does San Jose use civic participation to install quick build infrastructure that is tactical urbanism, which I think Jersey City is primarily using to cut down their traffic fatalities? And on those lines, also, like, how do you tie up your bike ped plan implementation with repavement project cycle? I guess it's a 7-year cycle to repave all the streets. So how do you tie those in? And how do you exactly decide which projects will be quick build versus which ones will be permanent? I think I added too many questions.
You could do a whole new presentation on just that. I love it. So first, do we use public participation when we're doing quick build projects? Absolutely. We really do pride ourselves on doing as much outreach as we possibly can. It's never enough. You can never do enough public outreach. It's really a very difficult part of being in the public seat. I'm kind of an activist at heart, but at the end of the day, I have to get things done. And that means sometimes saying now is go time and we can't hear anymore, right? And it's actually a hard point sometimes to say, but we do our best. So yes, we do. Our quick build projects come out of a lot of different parts of DOT. DOT is a very large, in San Jose, is a very large organization. And so we have quick build projects coming out of our what we call our options team, which is led by John Brazil, and there's bike projects coming out of that. There's the Vision Zero team, which really focuses obviously on Vision Zero, which is reducing fatalities and severe injuries on the whole transportation network, as well as our neighborhood traffic management team, which is doing kind of responding to local constituents' input. So they're coming from all those different places. what helps us decide if something is going to be a quick build or a permanent fixture? Money and time. It's very simple. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time to put concrete on the ground. And there are sometimes multiple layers of jurisdictional issues and potentially even land ownership issues. There is a lot of complication in that. And getting in quick build a lot of the time is something we can do, as the name suggests, quickly. We can get a lot of quick build projects done within a year or two, whereas concrete projects, if we're lucky, 3 years is a fast turnaround, but generally you're talking longer. And so when we're talking about saving people's lives and trying to make a better system, what we're kind of going towards is the model of quick build first, learn from that quick build design, because we always learn something by putting a design in, and then integrating and then going for heavy grants after that for the really big corridor. So in San Jose, for example, we're going to be building out San Fernando, which goes from Diridon Station all the way over to San Jose State. And it's been in a quick build format for a few years now. It's starting to deteriorate, actually, and we really need to get it replaced. Totally valid criticism here, heard from many of you probably, but the money is there. We want a really big grant, and the designs are just about done, and we're doing some kind of final public outreach, and construction will be beginning. John, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it begins next year. That sounds like, oh my God, next year, still that much longer. And it's incredibly frustrating, even from the inside, how long these things take. But also with a lot of money also comes more time, because in this case, there was federal money. And if you have federal money, there are federal requirements. And while in California, you can get around CEQA now, doing a lot of extra analysis for bike lanes, federal money does not allow you to do that. And so we've spent about a year to year and a half just doing NEPA, which is the national version of CEQA. So there's a lot of different pieces there and a lot more to be said. But yeah, I'll leave it there, unless you want me to follow up on something.
That's all good for now. And Patrick, does San Mateo County install quick build infrastructure or any cities, and what's the civic participation level for that?
I would say we do install quick builds. It's the most I see it is actually around like intersection treatments. So we've gotten it now into our TDM funding program where we can do crossing improvements as quick build. So that's the bulb outs you'll see that are painted, or bollards, things like that, helping to build those kind of protected intersections. It's really up to our local cities about kind of the level they want to do for that and what they can afford to put on the ground. I agree with Ramsey. A lot of it has to do with the funding and how far you can take things. So sometimes you might be able to do half a mile of a full build out project, or you can do 5 miles of striping projects or things like that. So it's kind of the scale in which you can see, and often it's a lot of cities will choose the signing striping projects because they're quicker to implement. They're kind of the quick wins that are on the ground. And the nice thing is once you take the space to reallocate, say you do a buffered bike lane, it kind of, when I worked for Tool Design Group, we had the kind of evolution of a protected bike lane graphic. And it started with, you shared the road and there were parked cars, and then you took the car away and you had a buffered bike lane. And then you had a bollard in the buffer, and then you had a raised, elevated, separated bikeway or something like that. So it's one of those, it takes a lot of momentum over time. And the more you can show that people are using the facility and that it has good feedback, the more funding you can get for that often when it comes to grant funds as well.
A quick follow-up question, and you can keep it very brief. Like, how much does it cost for a quick build project versus a permanent build out, maybe in comparison to 1 mile of a bike seat project?
Ooh, Ramses, you might know that better than I do. I think it's like $1 million a mile or more for the separated bikeways with concrete. Depending, it also depends on how the type of installation you use.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, we're really working hard to reduce that cost quite a bit, but that, I mean, $1 million a mile is a decent generalized estimate. I don't know if you guys know San Jose, we recently completed this project on 10th and 11th Street going into downtown. when we're using these new cast in place islands. And they're really effective, actually. That project we're pretty happy with. It's doing a lot of good things. And that was quite a bit cheaper. And we were very happy with that. But we're not sure if we can accomplish it at that price point, again, partly because of inflation, but also partly because our public works department was kind of like, hey, I'm not sure about that. So we're kind of we're trying to figure out how exactly to make that all kind of keep going. But yeah, concrete costs a lot of money, takes a lot of people's time, and the material is expensive, so on and so forth.
And how much for a quick build?
Oh, like a half to a fifth, half to a third of the cost, and maybe even sometimes less. Really depends on what it is, but yeah, I mean, I think Patrick's kind of half a mile to 5 mile kind of picture there is pretty accurate.
Cool, thank you. And I know we're almost at time, but quick closing remarks from you all. So everyone here, we all are bike activists in our own cities and towns. So how can Bikeitivists help and be involved in various stages of a plan, may it be development of the plan or during implementation? How exactly can we be involved and support the cities or agencies?
Bother us as much as you possibly can. Bother your electeds as much as you possibly can. You know, there's only so much money to go around, and there's only so much attention to go around. And it really is, at least in the South Bay, we don't have enough folks on the ground making a stink. And as somebody who's an activist at heart, I will never, ever, ever be angry at somebody making a stink that we're not doing enough. It really is, it is a missing and very important part of getting all this stuff done. The other part is stay involved, right? Which is kind of saying the other side of the same coin. Learn the plans. Bother John and I, and John Brazil and I, and Ryan Smith to help us, you know, explain it to you. You know, it really is. It's a team sport to do this stuff, and we need all voices at the table. In the end, we as staff set priorities through planning work, and then elected set priorities however the hell they want to. And so, you know, keeping them on with the program is something we can only do so much of. And you know, the activists' role within the community is to kind of be that driver to continue to make it go.
I build on that and just say, really help them focus on the implementation section of the plan. The sky and the pie ideas are great, and they're there for when opportunities come up, but really having a concrete idea of what you want that focus network to look like, and then following up with your city staff about what they're putting forward for funding is really important. Sometimes I see jurisdictions come to me with a project that's not even on their bike plan when they're applying for funding, things like that, where I'm like, where did this come from and why is this priority? What community support put this forward? Things like that. So really in the funding side, we're looking at things like, is it a connected facility that's closing a gap? Is it a low stress facility for all ages and abilities? We're really trying to make sure we're investing our public dollars in the most effective projects that we can. And so it's helpful to encourage your cities and be a part of those conversations. So it's not just someone creating that in a vacuum. Often pictures are great, worth 1,000 words, helping staff with grants, things like that. So always great there.
Great, thank you so much. It was really nice having you, and starting with Patrick, who gave us an overall overview, starting with the federal level to diving deep into different local plans, and then Ramses helping us getting through what exactly a bike ped plan means. So it was really wonderful having you guys. I'll be quickly going over some bike month announcements, but you both are welcome to stay for our local team meetings. We'll have a San Jose breakout, so I'm sure Ramses could join that, and Patrick, you're welcome to join any San Mateo teams. Okay, with that, I'm going to jump on to some quick Bike to Wherever Days announcements. So Bike Month is coming soon. And we have Bike to Wherever Days during Bike Month. Bike to Wherever Days is nothing but a transformation of the traditional Bike to Work Day pre-COVID, where people actually used to go to work. So this year it's going to be a 3-day celebration from May 18th to 20th, which will be held in conjunction with Bike Month. There are lots of activities. There'll be traditional bike to work day on Thursday, May 18th, with all the hoopla, Energizer station support and fun that you'd expect, which you've seen pre-COVID. And then there'll be bike bashes. There'll be 2 bike bashes, one in San Mateo County, which is going to be in the city of San Mateo, I think at the Cognition Bike Shop. And then there's another one in Santa Clara County, which is going to be in Stanford, in Palo Alto. And then Bike to Wherever days will continue over Friday, Saturday, May 19th and May 20th as well. And there'll be more fun events and Energizer stations across both the counties. You can see all details on the SVBC website, and as and when more Energizer stations get registered, they will all pop up on the website. Here are all the activities that are happening. So first and foremost, the first and foremost thing that we do is pledge to ride. So we start really early, seeking to draw thousands of people from across the Bay Area to pledge to ride at least once during Bike Month. The idea is that we want to encourage people, especially those who've never ridden their bike or ride their bikes very rarely, to experience the joy of biking. And once they get on their bikes, then we can encourage or find different ways to make sure they continue riding their bike throughout the year. So if you haven't pledged to ride already, do that and get your families, friends, and community members to pledge to ride. And I'll send all these links later, or if somebody is available, they can also put the links in the chat. The next part is Bike Champion of the Year. So these awards, basically those people who go out and inspire people to bike in their communities, or are great advocates to push cities to make sure they make their cities safer for people walking and biking. They help the cities put bicycle infrastructure and bicycle policies. So if you know anyone in the community, or maybe it's folks right around here in this room, nominate them. And nominations are open through March 31st. There'll be 1 champion each for every county in the Bay Area. So there'll be 1 champion for San Mateo County and one champion for Santa Clara County. I think all of this information has gone out through the local team Google groups, but we'll send this out again. The next part is Energizer stations. So informal teams, bike shops, companies, and organizations set up dozens of these across both the counties. So what you can do is volunteer to host a station, or volunteer to be present at one of the stations. So you'll find all of that information on this link. The next part is our programs team is doing a bunch of rides, classes, events across the Bike Month. So it's going to be a really busy month with lots of bikey activities. So you can access the calendar with all the events here. And lastly, there's Cities Challenge. So we're getting all the cities to compete against each other to see who gets the maximum number of pledges during Bike Month. So we're looking for council members in every city who can lead this effort and nudge their fellow council members to send out messages to basically get more pledges. So if you want to work with any of your council members, just ping me and I'll follow up with further details on what you can send out to your respective council members. All of these details are on the SVBC website, and it will be updated as and when we have more events and things get finalized. Lastly, where can you help? There are lots of volunteer opportunities. So first, we are seeking volunteers to help with preparing and handing out Bike to Wherever Day prizes in Santa Clara County, preparing and handing out prizes in San Mateo County. The next part is you can be a bicycle ambassador at bike shops and Energizer stations, where you basically recruit people to be SVBC local team members or SVBC donors or supporters. You can also help out at either of the bike bashes, which are happening on May 18th, or you can also host to work an Energizer station. And lastly, just go ahead and get people to pledge to ride. The more, the merrier. I think last year we had about 4,000 pledges, and we have a similar goal for this year. And I'm sure all of you can help us reach the goal. With that is the end for today. Any questions around Bike Month? Okay, hearing none, I guess we are ready to break into our local teams.
Alrighty, I am opening the breakout rooms right now. If you have any issues or need me to assign you to a group, please let me know. I'll be happy to do that.